Has this ever happened to you that you were right in the conversation, but still it did not went well? Hello, my name is Madhu and welcome back to my channel. And if you're new to this channel, then on this channel I talk about communication. So if you want to communicate with confidence and clarity, then you are at the right place. Now, coming back to the topic where I was telling you that it might have happened to you that you were right in the conversation, but still the conversation did not went well. This happens. Let's understand why this happens. So people generally believe that if I'm clear in the conversation, then people will understand me. Or if I'm a logical person and if I give the logic or if I explain logically, then people will understand me. But here's the truth. When emotions rises, then clarity fail. Let me say it again. When emotions rises, then clarity fails. So this means even if you explain clearly, but if you're emotionally triggered, then the conversation will not going to went well. Because what happens is when emotions rises, then logic drops, the tone suddenly changes, and you become defensive. So, when emotions become dominant, so even if you are right in the conversation, even if you are explaining it clearly, but because your emotions rises, then the conversation will not going to went well. Now, what happens when someone is emotionally triggered or the emotions become dominant or someone is what basically happens when someone is having the emotional leakage or how this emotional leakage looks like. So if your emotions become dominant or if you're emotionally triggered, then slight irritation will change your tone. So someone is saying something and that person had said something which kind of irritates you, but that slight irritation changes your tone. That is an emotional trigger. Insecurity. Insecurity makes you defensive. Someone said something and you felt insecure, and due to that insecurity, you become defensive. Now you're not listening, you're just becoming defensive and you're just trying to defend yourself. Another thing could be feeling unheard makes you louder. You feel that you are not heard, then you become louder. Feeling attacked makes you sharper. So these are all the things that happened when you're emotionally triggered. When you're emotionally triggered, then your words may be calm, but your emotions are still felt. Your tone changes. You're feeling unheard to start, speaking loudly. You're feeling attacked, so you become sharp. You become defensive. So when your emotions are high, then there is a change. So the words may not change, but still the emotions are felt in your body language. So now you know that sometimes your conversation do not went well or the conversation goes wrong, and this is happening because you are emotionally triggered. Your emotions rises and that's why the clarity fails. And now you also know that what happens when you're emotionally triggered. You become defensive, you become sharp, and all these things happens when you're emotionally triggered or when your emotions rises. Now what is the solution to that? What should you do when you're emotionally triggered and that will make your conversations to go wrong? So to when you're emotionally triggered or when your emotions rises, you can control that by becoming aware of it. If you're emotionally aware, then you can take the key steps to control your emotions. Now, how do you become emotionally aware? To become emotionally aware, you should notice your trigger And the four main triggers which you should notice are, you know, you should notice that when you're feeling criticized, when you're feeling misunderstood, when you're feeling unheard, you should also notice when you're feeling disrespected. So, the four triggers, which is feeling misunderstood, feeling criticized, feeling unheard, and also feeling disrespected, these are the triggers which you should notice. Once you notice this trigger, then you become emotionally aware, and then you can work on your emotions so that your conversations goes well. So, let's talk about what happens to you when you're emotionally triggered. You know, you are feeling disrespected, so now you're emotionally triggered, and now your response changes into reaction. Now, what is reacting versus responding, and how are these two different? When you're reacting, then there will not be any pause, you will be defensive, the tone will be emotional, and you will be proving yourself. So that is reaction. Reaction never takes any pause. Reaction is always immediate. You will going to be defensive in your tone. Your tone will also be emotional, and you will be proving something. So that is reacting. And when you're responding, then you will take a pause. Your voice will be grounded. You will sound that you have curiosity, and you will also going to have clarity. So that is reacting versus responding. Reaction is always immediate, and response needs a pause, and that's the difference. That when you're responding, then you will take a pause, whereas reaction don't need any pause. So now you know that sometimes your conversations do not goes well, and this happens because you're emotionally triggered. When you're emotionally triggered, then your response changes into the reaction, and this in turn your conversation will not going to go well because of this. Now, what should you do in such a scenario, and how should you make your conversations to go well? So, when you're emotionally triggered, what you should do is you should notice your emotion. Whenever you are feeling disrespected, or whenever you are feeling unheard, or there is some other kind of emotional trigger, then the first step is to notice the trigger. When you are having that kind of feeling, then you should notice that. Once you notice it, then take a pause for 2 to 3 seconds, and then speak slowly or lower your voice, and then continue speaking calmly. So, when your tone is lower or when your voice is lower, then the emotions reduces, and that is the emotion regulation tool or the exercise which you could do. Whenever you are having some kind of emotional trigger, first step is to notice the trigger, then take a pause for 2 to 3 seconds and speak slowly. That's how you can control your emotions to a level, and that's how you can also control your conversation. My dear friend, if you are emotionally aware, and if you have control on your emotions, which you can do by following the exercise which I just discussed, then the conflicts turns into conversation. I hope this entire information is helpful to you. Thank you for watching. Stay happy always.